Mr. Ma said was idiotic and problematic for the government and offensive to a professor who's very well regarded.
Carney is not getting away from it. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. Today, the Michael Ma situation is getting worse because, well, Carney just had a fundraiser with Michael Ma on the golf course, and the media went there. You had protesters there saying some pretty wild things. We got a bunch of other stuff here. Let's jump into it. Starting this one off, got Marty up north showing this graph here saying who Americans think their biggest supplier of foreign oil is. And, well, perception, most of it comes from Saudi Arabia, at least half. In reality, most of it's coming from Canada. I said this before. I said this early on when Carney started to negotiate with Donald Trump that we need to use our oil, the bottom barrel prices we're selling them our oil, as the leverage to get a deal. In reality, there's no deal coming. They don't want a deal. They're going to use this potentially for another election before the CUSMA renegotiations complete, before the midterms come in America, because then if Donald Trump loses some of his power, the boogeyman goes away, where Carney could potentially get 190 seats or however many it is for a true majority government, that he doesn't need to worry about people like Michael Ma can kick him out of the party, because in reality, he probably wouldn't keep him if he had more people right now for a more solid majority. Moving ahead, we've also got this one. Ottawa had a deficit of $20.8 billion in the fourth quarter of 2025. Carney's on track for a $100 billion deficit. This is ruining our country. This is why food is so expensive. We can't keep running deficits. We should be running surpluses, like smart countries do, like, for example, Norway, who has a sovereign wealth fund built off of oil, and instead we have liberal policies that are making life unaffordable. And speaking of which, we have countries are temporarily slashing gas taxes. Should Canada do the same? Of course. Why aren't they cutting the gas taxes right now? As Mario pointing out here, numerous countries are doing it. Australia cuts their fuel taxes in half and made public transit free in 2 states. Italy has cut taxes for 20 days and gave tax credits. Truckers, Spain, Ireland, Portugal have all cut fuel taxes, and Canada doing nothing because the Liberals don't care about us. It's all about getting as much money as possible and sending it over to gender-sensitive farming in Uganda and Democratic Republic of Congo, and more recently spent on defense procurement. We're going to be seeing all these big Brookfield contracts for rebuilding Ukraine or any other net zero policies. And what comes from that? Well, stuff like this. We're seeing Alberta, a separatist movement here, getting 177,000 signatures, so they will be holding their referendum. Will it pass? I don't think so. I think they'll get 30, maybe 35%. That's why Conservatives need to stick together. Have the referendum vote. I'm in full support of Albertans, voting for what's best for Albertans. But remember, Conservatives of Alberta, I was born and raised Alberta myself. We're all Conservatives of Canada. If Alberta fails in this vote, we need to stick together. And with that, we're seeing more policies here that don't favor Alberta, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, the Atlantic provinces. You're seeing Carney coming out with housing policies only for Ontario, as Table Salt pointing out. Why are 9 provinces and 3 territories in Canada paying for homeowners in Ontario to buy cheaper houses? Oh, right, there's 2 by-elections in Ontario. That's what we had with Carney's press conference the other day.
2 weeks before the Toronto by-elections that could give Mark Carney a majority government.
Don't you love the sound of construction in the morning?
The Prime Minister promising a tax cut to help fix one of Canada's most expensive housing markets.
In recent years, they've been growing at an unsustainable rate, increasing the cost of every new home.
Carney cutting the GST on new builds under $1 million and promising to cut development charges by 50% over 3 years.
It's all conservative policies stolen from Pierre Poilievre. Like, let's get real here. It's funny, too. He was trying to find a clip there where that lady wasn't heckling him, and you could still hear at the start of that clip, there's almost no clean sound bites from that housing announcement.
Says cities collect from developers to pay for things like sewers and roads and new subdivisions. Benefits only for Ontario.
This is going to lower upfront costs and create certainty for builders to build the affordable homes so Ontarians can buy and rent.
But that only happens if cities agree. The federal and Ontario governments putting up a combined $8.8 billion to get municipalities to play ball.
The difference here is Pierre Poilievre said you have to cut your bureaucracy or you don't get the money. Carney's not going to do the same thing here. Trudeau already did this. He gave the money. They didn't cut the bureaucracy. Nothing changes. What we need to do is have rules that if you cut bureaucracy, you make it cheaper to build houses, then you get the money. Plus, close the border and deport a whole bunch of the illegals out of here. All the guys who are ending Canadians' lives, truck drivers driving without licenses, all these dangerous IRGC officials, let's get all these people out of our country. How about that?
The municipalities, if you don't cut DCs, you aren't getting any money.
It's a strategy that failed under Justin Trudeau, with Ottawa and Toronto raising their construction taxes after receiving hundreds of millions in federal cash, part of a long-term trend, with development charges having increased 176% since 2011 in the GTA. often adding over $100,000 to the cost of a new home.
So I often rag on these guys' mainstream media. I'll give credit here to Mackenzie Gray for pointing this out on mainstream media, that this didn't work before. This is a failed Trudeau policy. Carney doing the same thing, stealing Poilievre's idea, the good parts of it, but not implementing it properly.
Using taxpayers' dollars from all across Canada to effectively bail out municipalities.
But what about the rest of the country? The finance minister wouldn't commit to the same programs for other provinces.
You don't always have one solution fit all, but we wanted to support every provinces and territory to increase the housing supply in the nation.
Another winner from these changes, Ontario developers, some of whom have been in significant financial stress, particularly in the GTA condo market. And if those developers pass on the tax savings, a big loser could be existing homeowners, as resale prices would likely drop.
Possibly dropping housing prices. Good for developers. This is all done for the by-election. I mean, come on. This is more of what you'd expect from the Liberals. Liberals by-elections with our tax dollars. Last time Carney announced more home building for Canadians, he did so in front of a fake building. Liberals lie. Yes. And with that, we got Melissa posting this. This is actually from about a month or so ago, but still relevant here. We've got huge hit in Q4, new construction way down for 2 consecutive quarters. And new construction here is the blue color, the dark blue, this one. Renovations is the light blue, and red is the ownership transfer costs. A lot of people sitting on the fence not wanting to sell because the prices are going down, and Canadians are waiting to see if the bottom keeps going down so they can buy in cheaper. New houses aren't being built. There's still too many people flooding into our country. These guys are not serious about fixing this problem. If you wanted to fix it, you have to close the borders and start deporting people. We got Shazzy Gully posting this. Homeowners with good credit scores are now defaulting on mortgages. Near prime delinquencies jumped 31% in 1 year. In Toronto, Vancouver, Brampton, and Markham, the spike is 55% plus. The mortgage shock no longer a subprime problem. It's spreading into the middle class. We are quickly losing the middle class. It's becoming very few upper class and a whole bunch of people sliding to the bottom. Now, before we get into the Michael Ma Carney fundraiser, the hecklers and all that stuff, look at this clip here. We have a new Canadian called a shop looking for a new rim for his trailer. This is what showed up.
So I have me a new Canadian that stopped in today, called me earlier, said he needed a rim for his trailer. I said, "You sure you just need a rim?" He said, "Yep, just a rim." I said, "Okay." So we showed up in the yard here today, and look what we got. Just need a rim, bud. Just one rim. The other one seems to be okay. Because the tire is still...
Just one rim. Just one. This one's totally fine. He drove to the yard like this. This should be against the law. Fined. You lose your license. Deportation. Boom. Done. Like, that's what should happen here. This is endangering Canadians on the road.
For cash, is what he said. I'm like, really? Isn't it fantastic?
These people are dangerous in our country. I get it. This is how things operate in India. You just work with it. You know, if you have a little crash and the wheel still spins, just keep driving. That's not how our country works here in Canada. We have safety regulations and rules, and you don't endanger other people's lives. But of course, the Liberals don't tell people this. They don't have any rules. There's no nothing when people come in. So you have these kind of ways of life coming from India now being deployed in our country.
There's not a cross member left in the trailer. She's busted wide open. It's a reefer unit. You can feel the cold air coming out of the floor because the floor is wide open, but he just needs a rim. Maybe just going to go for another rip, but brutal. And these guys are on the road every day.
I hope he called the cops, because that's what should happen here. Now, getting into a little bit of an update from Iran, we've got Kuwait says tanker hit with direct Iranian attack. There's not much from America. Saudi Arabia intercepts 3 ballistic missiles. Kuwait oil tanker fire extinguished. There's not much here, except for this. There is some gigantic bombs that were dropped. People are saying the biggest of the entire war. It took so much time for the sound to travel there, the size of that cloud. This must be so far away, and that bomb, that explosion is massive. And we've got another one here. It says, breaking, President Trump just posted a massive explosion in Isfahan, Iran, following what's believed to be U.S.-Israel airstrikes. Clearly something big. So this looks like a different one than the last one there. Not exactly sure what's going on over there or what they're striking. Now, jumping over to Mark Carney, I didn't show this clip here. He went on to gush about Joni Mitchell, saying she's the greatest Canadian artist, etc., etc. She's been living down in America. This is who they praised during the Juno Awards, essentially someone living in America. As it says here, she moved to America 61 years ago, and she praises Mark Carney. Like, you can't make up this level of nonsense.
This man is a blessing. You guys are so fortunate. I haven't been here in many, many years, but I'm so glad to be here tonight.
That's right. They called in this Canadian who hasn't been here in many years. She's getting this award for being such a great Canadian. Like, this is so pathetic.
With our wonderful Prime Minister. We are so fortunate to have him. I'm living in the States, and you know what's happening there.
She's living in the States for 61 years. Mark Carney's 91% invested in America. Tim Hodgson is an American citizen. And yet Canadians who voted for Mark Carney think he's doing what's best for us. Moving ahead, we've got a fundraiser. Mark Carney, Michael Maw, and a couple other people here. Tim Hodgson, Gary Anisandri. $1,775 at the Angus Glen Golf Club. Youth age 35 and under is only $925. What a steal. The timing of this couldn't be any worse, as Mark Carney trying to distance himself from Michael Maw in the situation, and well, this just flares things back up. We've got Dominic LeBlanc here questioned about Michael Maw, and this is an interesting response.
Max Paris, CBC News. Minister LeBlanc, just linking a couple of stories here in one question. How concerned are you that Michael Maw's comments last Thursday will make it difficult for Canada to prove to the Trump administration that it takes compliance and enforcement measures of forced labor seriously?
So I'm not worried in the sense that Mr. Maw properly expressed his regret and apologized for those comments. They do not represent the view of the government of Canada. The Americans, I think, know that. I was the public security minister for a couple of years, had conversations with the previous U.S. administration when I had that function about what we could do together at the level of the Canadian Border Services Agency, for example, to ensure that we're fighting against the issue of forced labor, importing goods that may have been made through forced labor. We're always looking to do more with allies and looking at...
Okay, so he just goes on to word salad here, but the most important part is he said Michael Maw apologized.
In the sense that Mr. Maw properly expressed his regret and apologized for those.
He properly expressed his regret and apologized, which we can see here on his new Twitter account because his other one, he locked down. We saw this apology a couple days ago. Well, where's the French version? Does anyone see it? I don't see it. There's none on his Twitter account. This is only in English. I thought he properly apologized. They demonized the CEO of Air Canada for not speaking French. Michael Maw didn't apologize in French.
Quote, the board will consider a number of performance criteria in assessing candidates, including the ability to communicate in French. So it is acknowledging that that was an issue. What more we'll hear from the company, what more we'll hear from Michael Rousseau himself, we'll be monitoring for that. But that is the announcement this morning. It is a retirement later this year.
That is a tell, though, in what they are looking for in the next position.
Oh, wow, it's a tell. Thank goodness we got Sherlock on the scene. This makes no sense where Michael Maw doesn't have to apologize in French, but the CEO of a private company does? How is the media not bringing this up? It's unbelievable.
And I think he's on the right track with wanting to sort of, lift our dependence, economic dependence on the United States, strike new strategic economic partnerships with countries like China and India. But you know what? If you're going to deal with countries like China and India, you're going to have to be very transactional. And by virtue of being transactional, that means oftentimes that you're going to need to overlook maybe some of the things on which you used to put on a premium. I'm not trying to suggest that Mark Carney doesn't care about human rights and slave labor. I'm sure he does. But it isn't the first thing top of mind that's going to be mentioned when Champagne or Mr. Carney back in January sits down with the authorities in Beijing.
If Carney cared about human rights, he'd be treating Canadians better, period.
Are we going to hear them say it that bluntly, Benzie?
I don't think we will. I think Louis is right. I think it's a difficult situation for the Prime Minister politically, because he doesn't yet have a majority. He'll have one probably 2 weeks from tonight, but even then it'll be so slim he can't afford to lose an errant MP. What Mr. Ma said was idiotic and problematic for the government and offensive to a professor who's very well regarded. And I think I was at the event today with the Prime Minister and Premier Ford and Mayor Chow, and you could tell Mr. Carney was getting that his body language was such that this was something that bugged him, clearly. He wasn't just bothered by the indigenous protesters who were screaming. That's what you could hear on the clip. It was clearly that this was a concern for him. But it's not that much of a concern, because right about now, in about an hour or so, he's going to be at a golf course in Markham with Mr. Ma at a Liberal fundraiser. So I think politics is a dirty business, and this is a tricky situation for a rookie prime minister who has, so far been very, very lucky and fortunate and had incredibly, he's sort of the rookie of the year so far in politics, but who knows? The things could get messy.
Then this is why they don't let Rob Benzie go on CBC. He was on the block list. That's what Travis Danraj showed in committee. He just called the Liberals idiotic and offensive to a professor. Obviously a bad look for Carney. Now, he just mentioned the golf course. We'll get to that in a second. But first, look at this. We've got Senator Victor O, who's one of the names on the 11 right there, number 4, compromised members of government, saying this: Michael Ma has clarified his questions in the industry committee concern auto manufacturing in Shenzhen, yada, yada, yada. What's interesting is the Chinese embassy replied on here. You see here is the official Twitter account of the Chinese embassy, the People's Republic of China. China-Canada EV cooperation is essentially mutually beneficial and win-win. It brings together tangible benefits to the people of both countries. It has been highly welcomed by the majority of the Canadian people. No, it has not. Using the so-called forced labor as a pretext to undermine this cooperation will only hurt the rights of Canadian consumers and is doomed to fail. We are sure that high-quality, affordable Chinese EVs will bring real benefits to Canadian consumers. This is going to hurt our own auto industry. Mark Carney is taking a shot at auto workers in Canada. If you're an auto worker, you should not be voting for Mark Carney. And if you did, well, you screwed up. And maybe it's time to switch your vote to Conservative so you can actually keep your employment long-term if we can ever get a Conservative government in our country. It's just interesting that they're paying attention on here, and the places they're commenting, well, Victor O, one of the names on that list. Now, as for the fundraiser, here's Mark Carney's motorcade showing up at Angus Glen Golf Club in Markham. This one posted by Mitch, who's independent on-the-ground protest coverage across GTA. Carney doesn't dare cancel this event. Now listen very carefully to what the protesters are saying. And it's interesting. I don't know what kind of protesters these are, NDP or Conservative, but as Rob Benzie mentioned, it was Indigenous protesters that were heckling him at his press conference, his housing announcement, which I didn't know. So there's a lot of shame, 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 which is what the NDP say. But listen carefully here. Some of this stuff, these people can't say this stuff. You hear that? Rest in peace. Shame, 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 rest in peace, rest in peace. Now, I'm quoting somebody from this video, but if I were to say that on this channel, mention Mark Carney and start saying rest in peace, well, I'd probably have some RCMP show up at my house wondering if I have some sort of intent to take action on the Prime Minister, which I do not. Let's be clear here. I'm just quoting, which I'm assuming are NDP, saying rest in peace to Mark Carney as he drives past in his motorcade. And this one here says, I'm watching you, Governor. There's one back here. It says Michael Ma must resign. Kick Michael Ma out of Liberal caucus.
Shame on Michael Ma. Shame on to you people. Go closer. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. That's quite the statement. I mean, you've got RCMP details standing right here. You know, these guys with the earpieces. It's amazing they don't even confront them and say, hey, you can't say rest in peace to the Prime Minister driving by. That's the kind of statements on the edge there that they might take action. Fashionably late doesn't cut it at $17.75 a ticket. Liberals should have to pay for security and travel for these events. Yes, they should. It should come out of their own caucus money, not taxpayer money.